those of us who are visitors to Hong Kong, I think we have to thank the finance minister for explaining to us, revealing to us the strength and the depth of both the educational and the scientific infrastructure in Hong Kong. It's very impressive. I think they're lucky to have such intelligent and inspired leadership in their government, and I wish that Mr. Tsang was a candidate for governor of California. So I am Reg Kelly. I'm the director of QB3. QB3 is interesting in the context of this session tonight because it's essentially a public-private partnership. It's public because it's a consortium of 3 public universities, Berkeley, UCSF, and UC Santa Cruz. It's private because we're mandated to do something which is relatively unusual for an academic institution. We're mandated to try to capture the value that's in our scientific discoveries and transform them, if we can, to things that are of benefit to society. In order to convert our science to benefits to society, we have to work with the private sector. So those of us who lead QB3 are very much involved with dealing with people who have skills in management, in finance, in banking, and in the legal system. Now, one of the things, therefore, that I get to do in my job as director is to meet people like our next speaker, Jack Wadsworth, who is a leader in the financial world. Now, I've been in the world of science for a long time, and I've got to meet many of the legendary figures we all know in biology. I have to say it's been a great privilege to meet one legendary figure in the field of finance, such as Jack. Jack has really done things which are really quite remarkable. Currently, he's here. His present job, he's a limited partner in Chaoyun Venture Investments, which is based up in Beijing, one of the few venture capital firms, I believe, in China. Before that, he actually ran the Asia office for Morgan Stanley for about 15 years, first based in Tokyo and then living here in Hong Kong. Now, Morgan Stanley, for those of you who've been following the news recently, is one of the last banks left standing, right? It's doing very well. Now, why is it doing very well? Well, it got large investments of money from 2 Asian institutions, one in Japan and one in China. Now, the fact that Jack was in charge of the Asia office for so long, I'm sure is just a coincidence, right? So Jack has been, as a man of great passions, he's got a great vision of where the future is going to be. He's been very much involved in observing and recognizing and funding new technologies. And currently, his great enthusiasm is for synthetic biology. And when Jack gets enthusiastic about something, he acts. And one of the things he's done, and many of you in this room won't know ever the extent to which he's done this, but one of he's acted is to try and make sure that this conference was a great success. So a large thing, we owe a large part of the success of this meeting to the enthusiasm and passion of Jack. So Jack, I'd like to invite you to join us, and I'd welcome Jack to give us his advice.
Reg, thank you very much. As I said this morning, it's nice to have an introduction that says everything I had to say. First of all, it is indeed a pleasure to be here at UST. And let me just start by telling a story. When I came here with Reg and Drew Endy and Chris Voigt on our first trip, my colleagues in the field of science had looked at the research that was being done in Hong Kong from the web and from talking to colleagues, and it was very clear to them that the place they should visit first was UST. And my experience so far with Yimeng and his colleagues has confirmed that the field of synthetic biology is being practiced here to a very high degree and shows great promise for the future. And I think that's what my field of finance and venture capital is really all about in the end, is great science and great ideas that come out of that science. So it's a delight to be here. Secondly, to follow my friend John Song is a great honor. I've known many people in the field of finance, many financial secretaries, many ministers of finance, and John is obviously steeped in the field of finance, is in one of the most important jobs in Hong Kong today. But what I've enjoyed about my time with John is his passion for science and his passion for culture and architecture. And that's a whole other subject, but there is one link between all of these ideas, and that is creativity, innovation, and risk-taking. That's what great science is about. That's what great culture is about. That's what great finance is about, and venture capital is about. I would have to say, as a comment to follow on my comment this morning, that the investment bankers of the world have become obsolete. Some of them were a bit too smart. As they say in London, too smart by half. And many of these brilliant ideas that they put together are having now to be unwound, and I think that's the process we're going through. To my remarks, I want to be very brief, and I want to make really, I think, 2 points about the field of economics and finance when it comes to synthetic biology. One, as I said this morning, I really am convinced, and even more so after sitting here today and listening to the presentations that all of you have made, this field really is the next big thing. I found it simple to explain to colleagues who really didn't get synthetic biology that if this science works and you can actually produce things like new sources of energy from waste materials or cellulose, we will single-handedly be able to drive the price of corn and sugar down while at the same time driving the price of oil down to $15 a barrel. That's a tall order, but I think this science puts it in the realm of possibility. It's a brand new science. It's 3 years old. I continue to be impressed with the tension between the open architecture that is manifested in the idea of biobricks. And I heard a number of speakers today talk about the importance of patents and proprietary information. I think there is going to be a tension between the idea of open architecture, which is really symbolized by biobricks, and no doubt this conference is, among other things, very importantly about that idea. I don't think there's any doubt about the fact that the commercial opportunities are huge, and as I said to John on several occasions, I think as this whole idea comes to Asia, this is a chance for Hong Kong to really be a leader in a field that has great excitement, because you have here great universities, great science, and as John said, lots of research going on, and that is what the venture capitalists like to back up to create commercial opportunities. The 2 things that I'd like to cover briefly, one is the origins, really, of venture capital as it applies to bioscience, and I'd like to contrast that to what I think is emerging as a relatively new relationship between venture capital, finance, and the field of synthetic biology. I had the privilege in the early part of my career to found Morgan Stanley's venture capital business and to work quite closely with many of the early venture capitalists in California. Our closest relationship, which I'm very proud of, was with Kleiner Perkins, Caulfield, and Byers. And they, of course, are identified with many great companies, but the first real biotech company that came out of the early days of work in this field was Genentech. And Tom Perkins was many years a director of Genentech, was the partner who steered that original investment. And what I learned from Tom in those days was that genetic engineering of the early days was very much like semiconductors, in the sense that not only did you have to have great science, but you had to have almost unlimited amounts of capital. And the unlimited amounts of capital had as much to do with driving the science to a commercializable product than it had to do with actually creating the product. And that obviously relates to the fact that it takes so long to get a drug from the laboratory to the market. And so the history of Genentech is about raising money every time they had a chance to raise money. It was venture capital, it was an IPO, it was research limited partnerships, it was every conceivable form of finance known to man. And I think genetic engineering in the field where the final outcome is to create medical products is still not that different. I think that synthetic biology is different. I may be proven wrong, but it feels to me like the science, while it's complicated, when an idea emerges from that science, the amount of money to take that scientific idea to a commercializable idea and then get it to market may be a much shorter period of time. The manufacturing, to the extent there is manufacturing, will be a big investment. But if you're creating an alternative fuel, presumably you won't have to deal with the FDA or other complicated organizations that take so long to get to market. And that brings me to how I really got here. When I first became involved with UCSF, I was interested in their science. I met Reg Kelly and became fascinated by the assignment that QB3 had, which was to accelerate the rate of commercialization of the science coming out of the California system. And as was mentioned this morning, QB3 is a combination of UCSF, Berkeley, and Santa Cruz. And those combined universities in the field of bioscience have roughly 170 labs, 2,500 PhDs, and an annual budget of $1.2 billion. Now, I wouldn't suggest that that should necessarily be the aspiration of Hong Kong, but John, I think you could do it if you wanted to. And what that does, of course, is it creates an immense amount of opportunity for commercializable ideas. And what we are working on, and what really drove Reg and I to come here, to come to China, to look around Asia, was the notion if you can find that quality of science being practiced anywhere, and you can back up to that quality of science a smart group of people who can help identify those projects that are commercializable and then get them funded so they don't get lost. Hong Kong, not unlike the United States, has money available for pure research, and venture capitalists that are interested in funding clearly identifiable products that work and need large amounts of capital to get to market. What we call in the venture capital community the valley of death is that space between the great scientific idea and the time when it is proven to the point where it can attract real venture capital. And what we are working on at UCSF right now is a small venture capital fund called Mission Bay Capital. And the idea is to take Reg and his team, give them the responsibility for identifying the commercializable products, getting them funded to proof of concept stage by this fund, and then those that make it through that screen will be very attractive to the venture capitalists in the Silicon Valley, who will, by the way, be investors in this fund because of their interest to see the early ideas as they come out of the labs. Hong Kong obviously has a great financial market. It has venture capital, but it has not traditionally had the kind of venture capital that we find in the Silicon Valley, which is focused more purely on science. I think this is an opportunity to encourage the formation of firms that will do that. It interests me. We had meetings on one of our trips here with venture capitalists who do focus on that kind of investment. We found several in China. Probably the best known is a firm called Morningside, which is Gerald Chan, who is Ronnie Chan's brother, who is himself a scientist and a doctor, and has, I think, advanced the cause of investing in that field further than anyone in this region. And he is very interested in what's going on here. If we could clone him, we'd win the game. I think that really is what I want to say. I think the potential is huge. I'm delighted to be here. I'm really pleased that this conference has come together in the way it has, and thanks to the support of John Sung, the Hong Kong government, and UST, we have a great start, and I look forward to the next 2 days. Reg.